They said the crown prince confessed nothing. Under the cold gaze of the imperial court, Li Shen stood silent. The ministers demanded explanation. The emperor demanded truth, but he offered neither. When pressed about the courtesan and the conspiracy, he merely bowed his head and said, "I sought freedom, not rebellion." The emperor's fury shook the hall. "A prince who seeks freedom from his duty," he roared, "is no son of mine." He stripped Li Shen of his title that same morning. I was summoned to the throne room as witness. When I entered, the air was heavy with incense and judgment. Li Shen knelt before his father, shackled with silk cords, his robe torn where the guards had seized him. The light that once burned in him was dim, but not extinguished. When he looked up at me, his eyes were calm, not accusing, not pleading. Only sad. "Do you believe me guilty, princess?" he asked, my throat closed. Before the emperor, I could not speak freely, but the truth tore inside me like glass. I forced myself to answer. "I believe your highness loved unwisely." A murmur rippled through the court. The emperor's face hardened. Li Shen bowed his head again, accepting the judgment. He was sent to the cold palace, the abandoned eastern wing where disgraced royals awaited either exile or quiet death. Lady Mei Lin, the courtesan, was arrested days later. She confessed, under duress, that she had encouraged the prince's disloyal thoughts, though it was clear her confession was written in blood and fear. The Grand Chancellor declared her execution would cleanse the shame upon the dynasty. The emperor agreed. I was not permitted to see Li Shen, but the guards could be bribed. A single night, 1 candle's worth of time. That was all they gave me. When I entered the cold palace, I found him sitting by the window, staring at the frost-coated courtyard. The room smelled of damp stone and ashes. He had grown thinner, his once dark hair streaked with early gray. "You shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "I had to." I took a step closer. "They will execute her tomorrow." His hands clenched. "Mei Lin?" I nodded. "She confessed." He laughed softly, the sound hollow. "Then she is braver than I." I wanted to hate him, to shout that he had ruined us both. But standing there, I saw not the prince who betrayed me, but the man I once believed could change the world. And perhaps he had, only not for the better. "I told the emperor nothing of your plans," I whispered. His eyes flickered toward me, sharp, searching. Then how did he know? I could not lie again. "I warned him. I thought I could protect you." If he knew, he might forgive. "Forgive?" He rose abruptly, his voice breaking. "Su Wei, you delivered me to the very chains I tried to escape." The words cut deep, but I met his gaze. "And what of me, my lord?" "You would have torn down the empire, our families, our vows, for a dream born in a courtesan's arms. Tell me, which of us betrayed the other first?" The silence that followed was colder than the frost outside. Finally he sank back down, shoulders slumped. "You are right," he said softly. "But I wish you weren't." We sat together in silence until the candle burned low. "Do you love her?" I asked at last. He didn't answer right away. "I love what I was with her," he said finally. "A man unburdened, free of crowns and oaths. And me?" I whispered. He looked at me, eyes glistening in the faint light. "You were my duty," he said. Then, softer, almost to himself, "and perhaps the only person who truly understood me." When the guards returned, he did not resist as they led me out. I turned once before the door closed, and he smiled, a broken, tender thing that said everything words could not. That was the last time I saw him. Lady Mei Lin was executed at dawn in the courtyard of the Vermilion Gate. The sky was pale with snow. I did not watch, but I heard the sound, the dull strike of the blade, the crowd's hush, the caw of distant crows. The emperor declared a period of silence for the royal household. The courtiers whispered that the crown princess had proven her loyalty, that heaven itself would reward such virtue. Virtue. How easily the word becomes a mask for sorrow. Spring came late that year. The frost lingered long after the plum trees should have bloomed. I wandered the palace gardens daily, my footsteps echoing in the empty courtyards where laughter once lived. One afternoon, the Empress Dowager summoned me. "The Emperor's health declines," she said, her face like carved ivory. "When he departs, there will be no crown prince to succeed him. You are young, childless, and tied to disgrace. You must choose your future wisely." She offered me a scroll, a decree of release from my marriage bond, allowing me to leave the palace and take vows as a nun if I so desired. "A life of silence for a life of peace," I bowed. "I accept, your majesty." I left the palace at the end of spring. The guards escorted me beyond the city walls, where the air smelled of pine and distant rain. As the gates closed behind me, I did not look back. The temple stood high in the mountains, above the mists where the world seemed to disappear. There were no jewels here, no politics, no whispers, only the rhythm of wind chimes and the slow turning of prayer wheels. At first, I thought I would forget him, but memory, like frost, never melts completely. Years passed. The dynasty endured. I heard that Li Shen was granted pardon after the emperor's death, though not his title. He lived quietly by the southern rivers, teaching poetry to village children. Sometimes, traders brought news of him to the temple. They said he grew a beard, that his hair had turned white, that he walked by the water each dusk, reciting poems to a name the villagers never knew. I asked no more. Some truths are better left in silence. One winter evening, as snow began to fall, I walked to the lotus pond behind the temple, the same kind of pond I had once watched from the crown prince's veranda. The surface was frozen, smooth as glass. Beneath the ice, I could see the shadows of withered lotus stems, waiting for spring. And then, faintly, impossibly, a single white lotus bud, untouched by frost, trembling just below the surface. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Li Shen's words came back to me from long ago, whispered during the early days of our marriage. "When the lotus blooms in frost, our love will be eternal." Back then, I had laughed, told him that such a thing could never happen. Now, standing there in the silence of snow and memory, I smiled, not with joy, but with peace. Because even if the lotus never truly bloomed, the promise had survived, fragile, hidden, but alive beneath the ice. I knelt by the pond, pressing my fingers to the cold surface. "Rest well, my prince," I whispered. "May your freedom be gentle." The wind stirred, carrying flakes across the water. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw him standing on the far bank, robes white as the snow, watching me with the same quiet sadness as before. Then the wind shifted and he was gone. That night, I lit a single lantern and set it afloat on the pond. It drifted slowly, its light reflecting in the frozen water like a captured star. When I closed my eyes, I imagined it floating all the way south, past rivers and villages, to where an old man might sit beneath plum blossoms, looking up from his poetry to see a light flickering across the water. Maybe he would smile. Maybe he would remember. And maybe, in that small fleeting moment, we would be together again, not as prince and princess, not as duty and betrayal, but as two souls finally free of frost. End. Epilogue. The song beneath the snow, soft music rises, the haunting notes of a guqin. Snow drifts over a mountain temple. The camera follows a line of lanterns, flickering in the dusk. Narration, Su Wei's voice. History will not remember my name as anything more than the crown princess who lost her husband to scandal. They will write of the emperor's wrath, of the courtesan's death, of the prince's fall. But they will not write of the quiet nights, or the soft words, or the way the frost shimmered on the lotus pond when love first began to fade. A cut to the frozen pond, the single white lotus faint beneath the ice. In this world, duty is a chain of gold, beautiful but heavy. We wear it until our necks bow and our hearts forget their own rhythm. And yet, even in the coldest winter, something small still breathes beneath the ice. A promise, a memory, a song. The scene shifts, a river far to the south. An elderly man sits beneath blooming plum trees, brush in hand, writing poetry. He pauses as a lantern drifts past on the water. The faintest smile touches his lips. They say that when the first snow falls, a lantern appears upon the southern river, a light that no wind can extinguish. Some call it a ghost. Others call it love. Sue, older now, stands at the temple gate, watching the snowfall. Her eyes are calm, filled not with sorrow but serenity. Perhaps love was never meant to conquer the world. Perhaps it was only meant to survive it, quietly, stubbornly, like a lotus in the frost. The goukin fades. Snow thickens, veiling the temple and the river in white. And so I remain, not as wife nor widow, but as witness to what was lost and what endures. A gust of wind scatters the snow across the pond. The white lotus beneath the ice gleams faintly, as if lit from within. Fade to black.